Very, very light comedy. I guess let's start at the end. I have 1,000,001 questions, but I imagine the audience also feels a similar way. It's such a roller coaster ride, in a way, breathless. What made this narrative enticing for you all as your feature directorial debut to explore?
Well, I guess we kind of set out, we knew that we wanted to do something in one location, and we knew that we wanted to do something with Brendan and Jordan because we worked with them previously on a short film, and we think they're amazing. So we kind of, that's where we started. We went, okay, single location, 2 characters, what can we come up with? And we wanted it to be something that is quite play-like in the first 2/3 of the film, and then really, hopefully, heavily escalates into something a bit more. So yeah, that's literally just where we started off, and it was really fun kind of putting that constraint on myself when writing. It's kind of like an exercise that you do in high school where they go, okay, you've got to write a story about a candle set in a lounge room or whatever, and you have to come up with
What's
something.
that? When am I in it?
Yeah, so it's kind of, it was fun having that constraint and kind of just being creative within that, and it's one of those things that, you know, the more constraints you have, sometimes the more creative you can be. So yeah, that's what enticed us to the idea, that single location, and just creating something really, hopefully, unique.
And folks, as a reminder, we will get to audience questions here shortly. Sticking with you two for one more second, y'all just have a habit through it. Like, and I'm sure the audience felt this as well. Your ability to hold tension and really
Maximize.
is extremely effective. Can you just talk about utilizing that style, utilizing those ideas as filmmakers, and what it allows you to explore is within your characters as well as the world you're sitting the audience in?
Like, I guess tension-wise, there are some things that were like inbuilt to the setting of the film. So that single location and kind of like a claustrophobia. So we kind of really wanted to use that to hopefully get people on the edge of their seats and create that feeling of being trapped with 2 characters.
And kind of hopefully even new stuff like the shift of lighting throughout. It was just in doing tests with our incredible DP Max talking now. It just became so apparent that the space that we were shooting in just could drastically be used in different ways all throughout. So just kind of in pre-production we boarded the crap out of it, storyboarded the crap out of it, just go, oh, that's interesting, and just kind of try and work on a bit of a ever-changing visual, almost like just keeping a rhythm going throughout it.
Also sound as well. And that's something like in the low budget space we knew that we wanted to,
with the sound. Working a low budget, we knew that we really wanted to use sound to its full capacity to try to do, make the film feel a lot bigger than it is, and that's part of the story as well, the ending, kind of the gag of the ending, and, hopefully you feel like, oh my gosh, we've been on this huge adventure, but it's actually happened inside this little trailer home. We really wanted to push what we could do with sound. We had a really great sound designer, his name's Duncan Campbell. He did some awesome work. And Darren as well.
Darren is here. Stand up, Darren.
So using sound and music together to kind of create a world outside the home and kind of have that ever raging threat of the storm that hopefully makes it feel like these 2 characters are trapped together.
Brendan and Jordan, y'all are incredible in this first off. I'm curious how you two built your relationship on set and managed to bring so much of this to life, considering, Indy, you mentioned this idea of a play. There is almost this cat and mouse game that's happening between your 2 characters.
Absolutely.
Can you just talk about what it was like crafting that?
Well, first of all, this is our second collaboration with Indian Joe. This is our third for me with these two guys.
So everyone, Brendan is Irish. He's not Australian.
So if you want to know how I got my character, it's called an accent coach. What was the question?
Well, first of all, I think Brendan and I both come from a theatre world, so that really helped in terms of like the amount of dialogue in this film, which is quite rare, I think, in this sort of indie space. And also, we're both completely crazy. So that helps us get through. Brendan tells lots of stories and I'm good at listening and telling them back. So yeah, I think we're both in love with acting, and I think that was a big part of it.
And it was also, I suppose, what makes it at the time easier is we were in the middle of COVID, so there was all these wonderful, at the time it didn't feel like it was wonderful, but even in rehearsals I remember me and Jordan in one second room, remember we were in one room with tape all over the floor, and they had to be in another room and direct us through a laptop. And then when we got on the set, it was so many, it was like,
You couldn't go near us.
so many weeks where it was like, it was only us two and Max with the camera. And then they were coming in there and it just felt like you were actually in a real house, you know, you were in a real gaff, you know, like it was, yeah, it was mad, it was mad, it was mad. My hardest thing was trying to figure out, because I played a sociopath for these guys before. So sociopath is kind of easy, not easy, but you know, you just play yourself happy in a way. But this was like, I didn't understand, it took me ages, didn't it? I did not understand how you play a psychopath with a conscience. That's what I couldn't get my head around. It's one thing, you know, doing what he does, but having a conscience about that, I found very strange. And it took us a few weeks of, there was discussion, a lot of reading, Anyway, I'll pass it.
Go.
I think it's a perfect opportunity to open up for audience questions. Any audience? Yes, right here in the back, sir, in the middle.
So in terms of length, I didn't read how long it was, but it seems like a feature length for sure. How did you land on making it this long, and did you play with making it super short, or this? It seems like it could go on forever because it was just continuing to build, which is very cool. How did you land on the time?
It definitely wasn't going to be shorter. It was planned to be about this length, but it was really hard. It's the real-time aspect of it, of just it continues and it's all in one location. I think turned out to be heaps harder than we thought. In the edit, just to work out what the pacing was, and you know, it kind of has to feel slower at the beginning, and you have to be aware as an audience member if something feels off, something feels strange, feeling like it can't sustain that feeling the whole time. But then if it is just too slow, it's just too slow. It was
A lot of massaging.
a lot of work, a lot of testing, just testing. We just tested on people a lot. There's a longer version, but I think we kind of landed in a good spot. And at one stage it's too quick. It was kind of 10 minutes quicker, and
It felt forced, yes. Quite so impact. Just kind of have to find the mid zone. It's really tricky.
and you.
Right here in the front.
Hi, congratulations on enjoying the film so much.
Thank you.
I was wondering if you guys could talk a little bit more about like the position of sharing the director role and working together, because it's not something like at least I have seen that often.
Who wants to answer?
So we met at uni, and we did a few projects together, and we found that we both like the same movies and have very similar taste. And we kind of, especially in uni, we had strengths in different areas. So Joe was much more on the visual side of things, and storyboarding, and I'm really working with the DOP, and I was coming from more of a writing perspective and working with actors. So we kind of clicked in that way, in that we could kind of go, okay, we can delegate a bit, and especially when you're on set and things are like really moving super duper fast, you can kind of be like, okay, because we know exactly what we want and we've talked about it so much, you can kind of split off and go, right, you chat to the actors, I'll chat to Max or whatever, and things can move a bit faster. But I do think that whilst that's been really good, that as we work more together, we're kind of like evening out a bit, like as I learn a bit more about camera and visuals and all that kind of stuff, and Joe gets more comfortable with talking to actors and all that kind of stuff, we kind of now like we kind of
I hate it.
even out, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think it's, we also just really like having someone like to go, what did you think of that, or you know, what should we do about this or whatever. It's like in terms of just confidence on set and when developing something, it feels like it's really nice to just have someone who has the exact same vision as you and knows exactly what's in your head to kind of go, yeah, we're good, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
And I think as an actor's point of view, like that was great about those two is like you didn't feel like you were going for one thing and someone for another. Like I think in the past I've worked with like maybe two directors and you feel like you might be gonna move something out of one and the other one's gonna be like, okay, she can do that. Like, but it was very much so apparent that these two are like completely same vision. Maybe one's talking more, but they've both got your back and they've both got the same, you know. And I think that's really important with two directors.
Good question, thank you.
Yes.
So was this going outside like really achieve like sound and visual effects of the actors?
This is so, as you know, 99% of the film takes place inside the trailer home. So every time you see a lightning flash outside the window, it's someone sitting on a little LED board going. So without sound, it's hilarious. And the second you put lightning sound, you're like, oh, that's lightning. Cool. And then every time we're inside the trailer home and someone opens a window and looks out, that's us in a studio with like a hose shooting out the window.
On me.
So that's practical, and then for the exterior, it's a mix of practical rain and then also VFX enhancement.
It very much like looked ridiculous from every other angle. Yeah, and we had a few things go wrong in our too long a story, but yeah, we had a very intense one night to get a small portion of the night to get all of our anything that looked outside or was outside, anything exterior, we had to get it, and we rocked up and nothing worked. Essentially, the rain machine didn't work. It was like a tiny drizzle, which kind of worked through a crack in the door. So we ended up getting it. But yes, with our schedule, it was very interesting. We almost didn't have any of it there for a little bit. We kind of had to pause that for a month and go into the edit, and eventually got it together, which was
The exteriors were shot like 6 months later. Shut up! You thought we tried all time.
So basically, I had dug my head in a bucket for every take. So there was a station of where it was Jordan's water bucket, and we were in the middle of Australian winter, which is very cold, and yeah, and a lot of oil in the hair that makes it wet.
And it was COVID, so no one could really go up to it.
Yeah, so I had to do my hair.
Someone would come and just throw it. Very interesting.
We have time for a couple more questions. Yes, sir.
Well, that's just really quick. I enjoyed the film a lot.
Thank you.
How long was the dialogue? Like that dialogue exchange? Was it multiple days of shooting, or was it?
Oh,
Oh, okay. It was 8 weeks. Six. No. So we came back and we did more. All together, you could say. You could.
We rehearsed for a couple of weeks.
We rehearsed for a couple of weeks, and we shot for about 4 weeks, and then we came back later and did a bit more.
Couple of days.
Yeah. So it was a lot of dialogue.
I think that's the thing, like,
if we hadn't rehearsed as much. Like we rehearsed so much because obviously when it being two actors, being me and Brendan and so many scenes, we got a lot of the stuff working before we went to set.
Yeah.
Because if we didn't do that, then
We're moving very.
yeah, you
It
could
was
move
so fast when
Yeah.
once we started shooting. Yeah.
We had a lot of days where we were doing like 15 pages a day, which if you make film, that's a lot. Everything gets so visually dense later on, and we just again we had such a tight schedule. It was really scheduled to be like the first 2/3 of the movie is shot in like 11 days. And then progressively as stuff gets crazier and ironically moves much faster, that kind of slowed down proportionately. So yeah.
Now the funniest thing was that I didn't read after I died. So I didn't read the script after my death. So then I was like, what else are we shooting? And I was like, oh
Halfway
shit,
through the
there's
schedule, isn't it?
quite a bit more.
Yeah, she was like after a week. "What?
Yeah, I was like, I think I've done all my stuff.
I just have to scream. You've got like 30 more pages of dialogue.
And he was like, I've got to die, I'm stressed out. I was like, oh, you'll be right.
Last question. Yes, wait.
Hi, first off, just congratulations on the film. It's amazing.
Thank you so
I
much.
enjoyed the sound design and
Thank
the
you.
music.
Thank
So I'm actually curious about the score that you had. How much of it, yeah, amazing. Congratulations once again.
Aaron?
How much of the score did you have, like did you have anything planned beforehand? Because I know the music was involved in the film itself, but did you have a reference track for what you were going for before, or did that process happen entirely in post?
Yeah, it happened entirely in post. Just got a really talented composer. Like it was we had a lot of discussion about stylistically what we wanted to do with it. Because it was a bit of discovery. It was kind of if we wanted it to be surreal while this is all happening until the very end. So it was a balance between it was too stripped back, it didn't kind of have this kind of sort of dreamlike quality that we were looking for, but then we went to we were going for a different. Originally, we were going for a slightly different style, but it started to feel like too grungy. Like we were trying to say, "This is set. Like this is real. This is really overly intense." So it was a lot of back and forth, wasn't it? There was a lot of experimentation, but yeah, I hopefully we've landed in a really interesting spot. And yeah, he's done an amazing job. He's done
Give
such
it
an
a round
amazing
of
job.
applause.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. That's all the time we have this evening. Another incredible round of applause for this. Thank you all so much for being here and sharing this film with us. And thank you to all of you for coming out on a Saturday night. Hope
Thank
you all
you so
enjoyed
much.
it.
Really
Enjoy the rest of the festival.